the Healing Through Love podcast with Sharlene Lynch and Rose Davidson. Explore the art of setting boundaries with Julie Bonn in our latest episode, number 98. Learn key strategies for personal growth and mental health.
Absolutely. Boundaries are essential, not only to saying no to abuse in your life, but to moving forward. You know, people are built, sadly, to be boundary breakers. And when they are controlling people in our lives or abusers in our lives, they don't just step over them, they crush them. They crush them, right? And that's in their psyche, that's in their belief system, and things they need to work with. And so boundaries, I found that boundaries are actually a very loving thing to do, both for you and for your people. And I think we were raised with the opposite. Boundaries are mean. You know, you don't set boundaries, you just forget this and forgive everything and everything's good. And that's not true, because you're not taking care of yourself. So, you know, boundaries are very important for your mental health, but it's also very important for the other person.
Welcome to another episode of Healing Through Love. Each week, we share ideas, experiences, and resources to increase the awareness of domestic and family violence and to empower survivors to grow and thrive. We talk with experts who share their advice, or with people who have experienced abuse, no matter where they are on their journey. This is all about healing through love. And now, here are your hosts, Sharlene Lynch and Rose Davidson.
Hello and welcome to the Healing Through Love podcast, the space where stories of strength, resilience, and transformation unfold. I'm your host, Sharlene Lynch, and I'm honoured to be your guide in this journey of empowering and healing. Today, we've got a very special episode tailored just for you. Whether you're driving or sipping a cup of tea or simply taking a moment for yourself, I want you to know that you're in a safe place, and Healing Through Love is here then more than just a podcast. It's a community, a beacon of hope, and a reminder that you're not alone. In this episode, we've got guests who will share a story that resonates with the core of our mission, a story that illuminates the power of love, resilience, and unwavering strength that lies within each of us. So settle in and take a few breaths and let the healing begin. But before we dive into today's inspiring narrative, a quick reminder that if you find value in our episodes, consider supporting us by subscribing, sharing, and leaving a review. Your engagement helps us reach more hearts and spread the message of healing with love. Today, I've got a beautiful guest. She's an amazing guest. She's Julie Bonn Blank. She is a domestic abuse survivor and a certified victim advocate. She's an author, speaker, and the Women's Service and Education Director for the ARMS, Abuse Recovery Ministry Services. We're going to dive in deep to find out more. Wow, Julie, tell me, how did you get where you are?
It's a long story. Thank you first for having me. I appreciate being here, and it's nice to have you all to talk to you and to really be genuine with you and to tell you what has worked for me and my healing, which love has a big piece to do with that. And so I am here to share, and thank you. Hearts are great. I had somebody look up a blue heart the other day because I'm always putting blue hearts. It's my favorite color in text and on the computer and on my posts. And they're like, I looked up the definition of a blue heart and it was a beautiful definition. And I'm like, I've never thought of that. I just love blue, but it worked out really well. So hearts are great. So my name is Julie Bonn Blank. I am a survivor of domestic abuse. There was a point in time in my life where I never would have admitted to that or knew what I was talking about. My main abuse, I did have abuse in my childhood somewhat, but my main abuse occurred in a 17-year marriage. And he was very addicted to drugs, and he was abusive, and the kids and I finally had to go. We had a final incident that included, again, he was a former law enforcement officer, and it was a tough situation all around because I'm a faith-based person, and I heard a lot from other people that are faith-based and leaders in the industry, unfortunately, which I'm working to change, that you're supposed to stay, and you're supposed to do the best you can, and you're supposed to go home and, be a better wife and things will improve. And that is not the case. You cannot change other people. And I actually, when I look back, realized I had had 3 abusive relationships. And then I realized there's something, in here in my heart. And I work with women every day they're like, why? This is my 4th time. I've been married 3 times maybe, or I've had this or that, or I had this and that. And I tell them, I used to feel like I was wearing a shirt that said, I've been abused, abuse me again. That's what I felt like. And so when I realized there was something in myself that needed healing, I found the ARMS program, and they have a free healing group called Her Journey. And I'm kind of type A, in case you might have picked that up. But I marched into these classes thinking, okay, I'm going to learn this and I'm going to teach this. And I'm going to teach these women that, exactly, that it is not, God's will, that they stay in abuse, and that it's not, you don't have to stay in abuse, that He doesn't want us in abusive situations. And I would leave every lesson with just tears pouring down my face, because the lessons were so poignant and so spot on. And for once, I didn't feel alone anymore and not vulnerable anymore. I was in a group that understood, that got it and had been there, and I wasn't crazy after all. And so that was 11 years ago. After I went through Her Journey 3 times, it's a 15-week class, but I needed more than some people need. I became a volunteer leader for them, and I volunteered for them for their marketing from afar. And then 5 years ago, I came on staff, and I came on staff as the women's director, somebody who's been there, done that. The program absolutely saved my life. And so I'm there because that's where I belong. And during my healing process, I also, was able to pick up writing again. I had always been a writer, and an author as well. But I went through that very traumatic many years where I couldn't write. It was just stuck, when I was in that abuse. And part of my healing process and bringing me back was not only getting on board at ARMS and doing this amazing work and advocacy and doing coaching, on the side, and talking to women day after day after day. It was writing. And that's what also what brought me back to my healing process and speaking of my experience. So I've come a long way. And I like to tell the gals that I talk to and work with, you can come that far as well. You can break this cycle in your life. You can break it in your family and in future generations if you work incredibly hard and you're determined to work on your healing, and you work on these things and truly live your abundant life, because that cannot happen while you are in abuse. That happens after you choose to say no more to that.
It is so true. And I love that. Writing is so cathartic, isn't it? It's very releasing. It also helps us raise our level of awareness, and we can see those patterns of behaviors, and we can identify and make different choices. I'm an advocate of even just journaling. I feel that just, getting it out energetically, pen to paper. I'm old school, 57, so I like to write it out. And just getting it out. And then, sometimes I reread it. Sometimes I re-journal, like check through and then like get a concise learning from, pages and pages of, let's say, verbal vomit. But
Exactly. Yeah.
it's so healing and releasing. And I love it. And, it's something that everybody can do, and it doesn't cost anything.
Right.
Oh, no.
But
I don't think we... Oh, that's okay. I thought we weren't recording.
it said it was and popped up, but I had to click, got it. So I think it is.
Rose,
Yes.
you'll have to edit that out.
Please edit out, Rose. Thank you very much.
Thank you both for editing it out.
And you don't look 57, Charlene. You don't even look 57.
I'm going to leave that bit in.
Put that back in.
Just leave that. Okay, we'll continue. Oh,
Okay.
Absolutely. I love it. And writing is so important. So you've written a few books, and they're available, from what I understand, that people can actually download them. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yeah. So I have a couple freebie novellas now. Survivor Warning. It is about human trafficking. That's a cause that's close to my heart, and that I also speak on. So if you've been trafficked or your abuse was very severe, you might find it a little triggering. I still have had a lot of survivors just read it and take their time and said that it was done in such a way that they were not triggered, but just a trigger warning there. So you can get 2 free ebooks at innocentjourneys.com. That's my gift to you tonight. And those are 2 short novellas. And then I have a fiction series called Guardians of Grace. And the first book is Innocent Lies, which is on a poster behind me. Second one is Innocent Voices. And book 3 will be coming out this week, both Amazon bestsellers and great reviews. And a lot of people making a difference. I had a woman call me last week that said, I am inspired to do something. I read your book and they were incredible. And what can I do? Who can I donate to? And I was able to give her the name of 2 organizations that she was able to donate to. So they're making an impact. And so I have another book coming out. I'm helping a gentleman write his memoir, and he was raised in the foster system. A lot of abuse in his home and in the foster system, went into a life of crime and drugs, and now, has become an absolute diamond and works with youth in our community. And he needed somebody to help get his story out, and that one's almost completed as well. So I do tend to gravitate toward that subject, but it's because people need to be aware. They need to be educated.
Oh, I'd love to know your views on the movie, The Cry of Freedom, The Call of Freedom.
Yeah. It was an excellent movie. I thought it was very well done. And, I was one of those people that thought the reason I wrote this book and it was on my heart for so long, this series, is because I was one of those people that thought human trafficking only occurred in third world countries. And as I researched, I was like, it is all over. It's in every city and any state. And, and people are a little more aware of that now than they were when I first put this book out. But yeah, Sound of Freedom was an excellent movie. It was very well done. It was very genuine to what actually does happen with survivors. Some of us would argue with the very last scene, when I don't want to spoil it for anybody, but when they kind of show life going back to normal. I heard some argument that, life never goes back to normal and there's a lot of healing. But I think eventually the people in the movie were able to go back to their former life. And yeah, that was an inspiring movie. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it.
Yeah, and I encourage our listeners today to stretch beyond just going back to normal and bouncing forward. Like, instead of moving back to where you were, moving to a new reality of something more, and that our cuts, our abrasions, our wounds will heal and allow us to have that scar tissue that we can then grow and expand on and be more and help others. And it's that degree of empathy and sympathy and compassion that we develop through the process of healing that allows us to, lend a hand to others who need to step up as well. So yeah, I think there's more. I think we can shift into a new version of what's possible for our lives. I love it. Now, you've got also a course that's available. Now, I understand that it's a free survivors of abuse. It's faith-based and it's an abuse recovery course. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, sure. It's called Her Journey, and it's through ARMS, and it's actually was written 25 years ago by the founder of our organization. We certainly updated it and modernized it first, just to let you know. But we have had over 43,000 women go through this course, and it's appropriate for ages 14 even and above. For ladies, we've expanded internationally, so we're not just in the U.S. now. We're in Canada and Mexico, Uganda, Ghana, and a few other places like that. And we also have Zoom groups 7 days a week, and it's free. It doesn't cost anything. It was a commitment from my founder from day one to not charge survivors. And if they had charged me when I went through it, I wouldn't have been able to do it either. So it's an important concept, but it is 15 lessons and they are faith-based. Now, everybody can come. If you have no faith, you can come as long as you're fine with us having scripture and prayer, basically, and all faiths come as well. But it is biblically based, and we really hone in on what God really wants. So we have, a lesson here. I'll tell you about my favorite lesson, because the word submission to me, as a faith-based person, became a very, very ugly word to me in my marriage. And literally, if I heard the word, I would have PTSD symptoms of, submission and what it was meant. We have a lesson in Her Journey that talks about submission versus oppression, and that what most of us experience is not submission at all. In fact, if submission is demanded from you, it is oppression. That is not submission. That is not how it works. And that's not how God even says it works in the Bible. And we're not supposed to submit to somebody who's not, first submitted to being honorable to us and treating us as an equal and respect. And so that was one lesson. I was like, I got to see how this organization handles submission, because if they don't handle it right, I'm not teaching this stuff. And obviously I've been teaching now for 11 years, but there's also a lot of lessons on learning to dream again, how to move on, how to deal with our loneliness and anger and our depression. There's a good lesson on boundaries. And there's a good lesson on the recognition of abuse, because we actually teach 8 types of abuse, not just the 3 or 4 that people normally teach. So it is an incredible program. I highly recommend it, and it's free. So you might as well give it a shot.
I love that. And the links for both of these, the books and also the recovery course, is in the show notes and also in the show description. Now, you mentioned boundaries, and I really would love to dive in. I know that strengthening my boundaries was like the precursor for me being able to move forward. I'd really love to have a conversation about boundaries. So tell me a little bit more about how you teach and show and educate people around boundaries.
Absolutely. Boundaries are essential, not only to saying no to abuse in your life, but to moving forward. People are built, sadly, to be boundary breakers. And when they are controlling people in our lives or abusers in our lives, they don't just step over them, they crush them. They crush them, right? And that's in their psyche, that's in their belief system, and things they need to work with. And so boundaries, I found that boundaries are actually a very loving thing to do, both for you and for your people. And I think we were raised with the opposite. Boundaries are mean. You don't set boundaries, you just forget this and forgive everything and everything's good. And that's not true, because you're not taking care of yourself. So, boundaries are very important for your mental health, but it's also very important for the other person. And they're not going to take it well. There's not going to be a situation where they're going to say, thank you for setting that boundary. It saved my life. They may in the future, but in the beginning, it's pretty hard. And yet, if you truly love someone, you're going to set a boundary, right? If your kid is out there playing ball and runs out in the street to get the ball and there's a truck coming, there's a reason you're going to pull your kiddo back and say, this is a boundary. You cannot run on the street, but you're doing that because you love them, not because you want to put them in a box or anything else. You love them and you want them to be safe. And that should be the purpose of boundaries, is keeping yourself safe and other people safe as well. So, healthy relationships have an equality, and I demonstrate it to the gals I work with like this. Because if you are equal to somebody, you are on the same level. But when you are with an abusive person or controlling person, they truly see themselves as above you. They have this belief system that you are not worthy like them, that you are not as smart, that you are not as valuable, that you deserve this or whatever. And it puts you on an unequal level, which actually does prevent emotional intimacy, and not just, physical intimacy, but emotional intimacy. And that is what equality is here. And healthy relationships have equality, they have respect, they have love, and they have honor. And the definition of love really is treating somebody better even than yourself, and caring for them, better than yourself. And so those are healthy relationships. And then we teach 8 types of abuse. And there are things on there that people have no idea. For instance, like the silent treatment, is verbal abuse. I talk often in my talks. I'm pretty blunt. I'll just say it. Pornography is sexual abuse. If your partner is not in agreement with using pornography in your relationship, or you're watching it in secret, it's been a conversation you've had, and you're getting magazines or whatever, that is considered, sexual abuse. But we also teach spiritual abuse, financial abuse, animal abuse, property abuse, verbal, physical, and then all abuse is psychological. And because of that, we widen the range. And, those of us in the industry can get frustrated with our justice system, and our law that will only recognize physical and sexual abuse as a crime. Now, Britain has taken a move in the last, I think, year or so, and has made emotional abuse a crime. And that we all need to follow that. That is absolutely what needs to happen, because the impact of psychological and emotional abuse is worse than the physical. It takes longer to heal from. It affects the children more. And there's been study after study that show that. So the reason that I like to, sorry, go ahead.
It's so subtle. It's so subtle that it's not like you can see or feel it. It's so subtle. And I think that's why they get away with it so much more.
I agree. Yeah, it can be very subtle. And abuse can be covert or overt. So, that's what we say, when we talk about the silent treatment being part of verbal abuse, it doesn't come across to the general public as abusive, but it is, because it's a ways to try to control the other person. And that's, that you got to look at the motives behind somebody. And if he doesn't want you to go to an event and you're like, this is an event. And I had that situation in my marriage, and my husband, our kids were young, didn't want me to go to my brother's wedding. It was 1 state away. And I was going to go, and he was very adamant that he didn't want me to go, and he'd have to be alone with the kids. How dare I, right? And in my mind, I was like, this is my brother's one and only wedding. This is important. This is a family event. My folks are going to be there. I don't want to have to go explain to my folks, why I wasn't at my brother's wedding. So I put my foot down, and I went, but I literally, as I look back, I think, wow, I did that. I literally took the flight out, was at their wedding, was at a piece of the reception, left early to catch a flight back, and was back just, the next day. Well, my consequences for that were 4 days of both this, of the silent treatment, of anger, of, lashing out, of things. I had to pay for that. And so people, when they think of the silent treatment, that is very, it's an underhanded way to do it. We have people in our programmings and even in our offender programs that never rage. They don't rage because all their abuse is silent, but it is just, it is just as damaging to have that type of abuse than it is to have somebody raging at you. It's almost scarier in some ways when they look at you with those scary eyes and they think they've got control over everything.
So as a survivor myself, I know that when I built myself up, when I built my self-worth up above my self-esteem to a place where I was bulletproof, then I attracted the man of my dreams, a beautiful faith-based man. Yes, and it had to start with me. So, it's one thing to step out of that environment where the abuse is happening. It's another thing to do the work on yourself and to hold yourself at a different level. And of course, using the boundaries, because we need them for ourselves as well, boundaries for ourselves and for others, so that we can be almost attractive to the right person. So it's like I was attractive to the wrong person when I didn't believe in myself. It was like I was a flower, they were the bee. And so I would repeatedly get the same challenge over and over again, because I was playing the victim, basically. I was playing the person who could be abused. And people that know me now go, like, they just can't even imagine that I would have ever been that person. So it can happen to anybody, and it can happen in ways that we're not aware of. And as Julie's mentioned, there's more than one way. So if you're listening to this podcast today and you feel that perhaps maybe there is a chance that you might have recovered, but not all completely, and this might be showing up in different ways, maybe relationships at work, and even relationship with friends and family as well. So if these patterns of behaviors are continuing, this is a fantastic course to help you educate yourself, lift your level of self-worth and self-esteem, so that you can be bulletproof, so that you can then help others as well, because you'll be out the other side. I love it. This is fantastic. So how long has this course been going for?
For 25 years now. And so it's been updated a little bit, but highly, highly affected. And I resonate with your experience, because I am also remarried to, a man of faith, an amazing man who would never, I know, right? He would never, ever even think of, touching me in an inappropriate way or yelling at me or giving me the silent treatment. But I saw that too in my life until I understood my true worth and my true value, until I said, I deserve better than this. I do deserve better. And I believe that. I was not able to make those changes in my life, and he would not have been drawn to me. I pretty much suspect, if I was in that victim mode, as you called her, that victim, mentality. And so I tell people, God has an abundant life for you. He really does. And maybe it is writing and speaking and coaching and advocacy, or maybe it's something completely different. Maybe you've always wanted to be an attorney. I had a gal call me the other day, and she called to get class information for one of her clients. And I'm like, well, tell me about you. I don't know. It was a slow day at the office, I guess. But I said, tell me about you. And she goes, well, I'm an attorney and I only work with domestic violence victims. And I'm like, how did you get there? And she goes, well, it was her journey. She goes, it was that lesson in her journey that talked about reaching for your dreams. She goes, I went home that night. She goes, and I started making moves, not only to leave my abuse, but to get back into school and to become an attorney to help DV victims. And I was just like, wow, that's, that's an amazing, amazing thing. And so many people do feel called to help, in some way, shape, or form. And not all people do. And if you don't feel called to do that, that's okay. That's okay. Get through your stuff, make yourself healthy, set your boundaries, say no more to abuse, watch those red flags and pay attention this time. Don't just, work through them. And you'll be much happier and happier in your abundant life after abuse.
Yes.
There's blessings for you out there once you start saying no to abuse, for sure.
So true. Julie and I are not saying that you're responsible for the situation you're in. What we are saying is have a look to see how you could feel differently about yourself, so we would be less attractive to those who consider us an easy bait. So it's not about us being the reason for it, it's that we do play some part of it and we have that level of attraction to them. You mentioned red flags. I'd love to dive into red flags. I believe it's sort of connected in some way to boundaries, but I'd love to dive in a little bit to the red flags. Can we have a conversation about that?
Absolutely. Sure. I'm up for that. We have a great article on our website, abuserecovery.org. It's on the resources page on the warning signs of abuse. And we find ourselves talking a lot to young people. In fact, we were just contacted by a major school organization that wants to teach more on dating violence, and there's not enough in their current curriculum. So we've been talking to them about adding more, but there are red flags in the relationship, whether you see them or not, when you're with an abusive person. And they start out very small, right? If when we were first started dating somebody, if they smacked us across the face, we'd probably say, okay, most of us, I'm not going to put up with that, right? Stop, right? But it starts very subtle. And one of those I have found extremely consistent through the years is a quick for push involvement. So whether it's our young people or older people, I even have gals I work with now that have divorced their abuser and they're moving on. So they're dating. And then they're calling me going, something's up here. And I'm like, well, tell me about it. And that's what he's doing. He's pushing for quick involvement. And that is a warning sign of that personality. Any temper at all. And as we mentioned before, not all abusers have a temper. Some of them do the opposite in very, very quiet ways. But any kind of temper at all, if they explode or rage, not just at you, maybe it's on the road, right? Maybe you're driving along with them and they blow up at this van in front of them that's going 10 miles under the speed limit. Pay attention to that. Pay attention to how they treat their relatives and their family. And here's another warning sign that not people don't hear about. If you hear that he has a crazy ex-wife, pay attention to that. Pay attention to that. I cannot tell you how many women I've worked with that get together with him and they're like, oh yeah, but she was crazy. And then they come to realize, no, he was abusive, as they're going through it. And he just makes her out to be crazy. Fits of jealousy, things like your time, somebody who questions, doesn't trust you. Where were you last night, or wants all your time. One of my first signs was after our honeymoon. We came back a little early and my girlfriends were my bridesmaids and they were still in town. There were some that traveled and they of course were like, let's go to the mall. Let's go to lunch. They want to hear all about the honeymoon. And I was like, oh yes, let's do this. And I went to him and he was like, no. And I'm like, what do you mean? And he was like, if you do this, you're now married to me. And if you do this, you're choosing your time with them over me. And that's not how it's supposed to be now that we're married. And I was like, huh? And of course I went back around to that. Well, okay, we are married. He has a point because I was young and I was not paying attention to the red flags. And of course it only spiraled from there. So there's some example of early warning signs. Educate your children when they are, and your grandchildren, when they're starting their dating life, if they are constantly receiving texts from somebody, for instance, that they're thinking about going out with, but he wants to know, where are you? What are you doing? And who are you with tonight? And you need to be with me and not with other people. Or she tells him plans and he's texting during that time period. I had that with my marriage too, because my husband wouldn't go for counseling, and that's a good thing because we never recommend the whole nother topic, never recommend couples counseling when there's abuse present. Okay. As long as there's abuse present, there's no relationship to work on. So you make sure you have somebody, you're doing a separate counseling and it's an informed person. But when I would go to counseling with this person at my church, he would blow up my phone, text after text after call after call. And I'd be like, sorry, Dan, I have to get this because I knew there would be consequences when I got home if I wasn't answering those things. And so anytime you have somebody that's blowing the phone off the hook, I got plans tonight with my girlfriends. We're going to go see a movie. And then you get your phone out and there's 20 texts. Where are you? What are you doing? What are you doing? Oh, can you grab me this from the store? When will you be home? Even things that seem innocent on there. If somebody cannot leave you alone for a night or a few hours and trust that you are with your girlfriends, having a good time and need to not be with him, then that is also an early warning sign that we often see.
Absolutely. I love that you mentioned it. We call it love bombing here in Australia,
Yes.
where they just like get on you. And if you're coming from a low base, if you're coming from a low level of self-esteem and self-worth, then you like eat that up and become even more attractive to them. So we can do the inside work ourselves and make ourselves bulletproof, then we're not going to be attractive to those. And that you won't even be in their vision, that they won't even find you attractive.
Right.
Because you don't vibrate at that frequency that they know that they can manipulate. I love it.
Right.
Great work, Julie. This is fantastic, and so many amazing resources, and they're all free. So if you're listening to this podcast today and you need this assistance, reach out. The links are going to be in the show notes and also in the description. Just in final words, Julie, what are your words of wisdom to our listeners today?
Can I give you the 4 things about boundaries that people don't really know? Okay. So number 1, it's really incredibly important to pick your battles. You cannot put a boundary on every single little thing because they become ineffective is what happens. So I look for keywords when I'm talking to ladies on the phone. Keywords can be like, I've had enough, I can't do anymore. Keywords can be like, if it's an intimate partner, it could be like, my kids are having nightmares and I'm worried about their school performance. My kids are scared to go see dad this weekend. It could be, my mental health is just, I had to go on antidepressants lately because I just can't get out. I feel so stuck. If you're feeling that way, it's time to set a boundary. So that's number 1. Number 2, your phrasing is really vital. And I don't hear this anywhere. And that's why I want to make sure people know about it, because in your phrasing, you're putting the ball back in their court for their decisions. So let's say you have a brother that comes over and you get in a fight with him every time, and it spirals you down, and 3 days you're depressed because your brother came over and you had a fight, right? Might be time to set a boundary. And you need to set a boundary with your brother and say, in this way, if you choose to come over to my house and start screaming and swearing at me or whatever the case might be, then I'm going to choose this. In doing so, you're putting the ball in their court for their decision, and you're also informing them that if they choose to do that, you are going to choose your behavior. Number 3, you always want safe consequences. So here's an example with the brother. You don't want to say, if you come over and yell and swear at me and we have a problem, I'm not going to talk to you for 2 months. If your mother is controlling and as a result of that, she's going to come after you and be abusive because you're not in contact with your brother, and everybody should be in contact with your brother, that might not be a safe consequence. So find one that's safe. So brother, if you come over here and you swear and yell and scream at me again, I'm going to have you leave the house for the evening. And if you don't leave, I'm going to call somebody like the cops or whatever to come have you leave, and then enforce that. And that's the 4th thing that you don't hear, is that they must be enforced. If your consequence is not enforced, it will not mean a darn thing, and they will do it again and stomp all over. So I work with a lot of women that they finally get to a point where they set a boundary and they're like, okay, I want you to move out of the bedroom for a while. I need some time. I need to work on my healing. But then they do not follow it up with that consequence. And then as a result, the boundary means nothing. So make sure it's a safe consequence and that you can also follow through with it. And then you have to do it. And it's a hard thing. It's such a hard thing. But the more you recognize your value and your worth, your true value and your true worth, in here, you can start setting those and sticking with them, and you will be healthier for it. And so will the rest of people in your life, and your kids and your grandkids will learn from you as you set those boundaries, that those things are healthy to do in their life as well.
I love it. That's fantastic, Julie. I love this. My favorite thing to say in and around boundaries is, I'm not available for that.
There you go. I love it.
That is my standard response in business and also in relationships as well. So I love it. And everyone who knows I use it, they just laugh as soon as they see the hand goes up because they know I'm going to say I'm not available for that. I love it.
Yep,
It's a
exactly.
way. And it is all about strengthening those boundaries. Julie, this has been a privilege and a pleasure to have a conversation with you today. I really appreciate it. And thank you so much for sharing these beautiful resources. For the listeners today, if you're listening and you want to lean into Healing Through Love, we hold Pamper Days both here in South Australia and also in 8 different locations around the globe. If you'd like to be a participant, or if you are a survivor and you'd like to attend for free one of our Pamper Days, which is like, think day spa on steroids, we would love to have you in our proximity. Thank you so much for holding this space. That's a bye from me and a bye from Julie.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Healing Through Love. You can get further resources, see the show notes, or simply reach out to us via our website at htlaustralia.org. Thanks so much for joining us, and we look forward to your company next time on the Healing Through Love podcast.